Okay, welcome to Tushita. Today is we started on a Friday, is today Thursday. Then it's the seventh day of the Days of Miracles. Oh my goodness, time is moving fast. So thank you so much for joining us with another Days of Miracle program. Thank you, Venerable Siljana. She might not hear me. She's joining us again, translating into, yes, she hears, into
I'm
Italian.
here. I'm
She's in the
on the
bus.
train today. Now on the train, so I will translate tonight
Oh,
the talk. But on the train, I can listen the talk and say, hi, Paula.
Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
Very well,
Nice to see
thank
you.
you. Tomorrow we
Yeah.
are going to have a press conference to present the monastery to the public, so there will be a press conference. So I'm traveling now. So, but tonight on the hotel, I will translate your talk. I will
So where
enjoying
are you
now.
going to? Where are you going
Milano.
to?
Milano. Yeah. So, okay, enjoy your talk. I will listen the
thank
talk,
you.
okay? Okay,
Okay.
ciao.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Cynthia. Yeah.
Welcome. Ciao.
Amazing.
Oh, I've got one more
Ciao.
thing to get.
Zoom is amazing, isn't it? And while Paula is getting her things, so today we have a very special guest, Paula Chichester. I might as well introduce her while she is gone, and there she comes back. So, Paula, please correct me. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you are in retreat, and it's always such a pleasure to have you with us. Of course, in the beginning, we invited you towards the beginning of the program because you are one of Lama Yeshe's students, right? So it's always a pleasure to have you. So Paula was around in Berkeley, I guess it was in the 60s, very much interested in Paula in environmental things and making the world a better place. Yeah. Paula was one of the hippies. I think so, right? And then
Yeah.
Paula bumped into the lamas, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I believe. Yeah. And got hooked quite quickly. And then at some point got the advice to do some retreats, pretty amazing. Yeah. So Paula can close her ears, but she did a 3-year retreat and another 4-year retreat. So that as a Westerner and as a Western woman is quite extraordinary. It's quite an accomplishment. Yeah. So we are so happy to have somebody so yeah, I mean, I am always in big awe when I, first got into Buddhism. I remember reading a mandala, and there was your story of doing a retreat in Vermont in a little hut that was just big enough to prostrate, I think. You didn't have any heating, and there is what, 6 months of snow or something. And I was just in great awe, and I still am. So thank you so much, Paula, for joining us today. And your sessions are always, a great pleasure because you just make it so experimental, so kind of putting it all into practice straight away. So I stop babbling and give you the opportunity to talk. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I think I see SK there. That's really nice that you came. It's a nice kind of small group today, but good enough. And anyway, I always feel honored when Kunpin invites me and to be part of this group of practitioners and scholars and great teachers who have a lot of experience. And yeah, so I'm happy to be here today. And today I would like to talk about developing bodhicitta because this is also the day that we remember Lama Yeshe. And that was his main wish, was for us to develop bodhicitta. And at the beginning, what I ran to get was the other day, I came across an old Christmas card from Vajrapani Institute, and they would always send out a picture of the stupa of Lama Yeshe that we built in, when was that, 1985 and 86. And then they have a quote from Lama, and this one says, I pray that you discover eternal peace so that you are no longer lonely and no longer have aggression, so that all universal living beings become dear friends and communicate heart to heart. And, Lama said this in Christmas of 1981. And it's so true now, and even more so now. The world is plummeting into militarism again, once again, because people don't have this universal loving heart that cares for all sentient beings. And, I was a very young child when I realized that was the most important thing. And perhaps it was part of my Christian upbringing, but I think it was more the influence of seeing those photographs in Life magazine of the war in Vietnam. And, nowadays, for the last 20 years, they don't allow the media to portray those kinds of photographs for people to see what war is about. And so, we have people who don't understand that war is a really, really horrible thing. And, when we see what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine and Sudan, and so bodhicitta becomes even more and more powerful, but also more and more important to develop. And I just thought that I would review, some of the things that Lama said and that Lama told us, because I think maybe some of the things he said sort of went over our heads. And I feel like I was really fortunate because, due to the kindness of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and people who supported me, my dear friend Roger Munro, who was the biggest support in my life for doing retreats. Couldn't have done them without him. I was able to do this first long retreat, which was actually 4 years the first. They were both 4 years. And I started it, it was a long time ago now. So when Kunpin says she did those retreats, I mean, that was a long time ago now. And but they have set me up in my life for a lifetime of developing bodhicitta. And so I wanted today to kind of share some of the insights and some of the ways, or the way, that I have found to make it something that I feel, not something that I think about. And so I think the title of this talk, when Kunpin asks me, what are you going to talk about? I never have any idea. So I just said something like very simple Dharma practice. And then I realized that when I wanted to speak about bodhicitta, that is the essential Dharma practice. And the thing about it is that Lama said on a few occasions, first of all, one of the things that I remember Lama Yeshe saying was that when we take refuge, we should, there's the words aren't important, that taking refuge is what we feel, that he said the most powerful way to take refuge is without any words at all. And of course, it took me a long time to understand that. And then another time, Lama would say, I remember him saying, you people, instead of coming home and rushing and reading through all your prayers before you go to bed at night, wouldn't it be more beneficial to just lie down on the couch and meditate on bodhicitta? So, and what did that mean, And then another time, it was one of the last times I saw Lama, and he was giving a Vajrasattva empowerment at Vajrapani Institute in the summer of 1980, I can't remember if it was 82 or 83. I think it was 83, yeah, 1983, just before he went back to India and, got really ill. But, and so at the beginning, our great geshes, our teachers, and I'm so grateful to them, but often before they start any talk, they will just talk about the wonders and the marvelousness of bodhicitta. And they can go on about it for like 20 minutes. And that's their motivation, you know. And of course, these geshes are these great Kadampa lamas who have completely renounced the world and have developed bodhicitta. And I think some of us, like Sangin Kadro and myself, were able to be around these incredible beings that grew up in Tibet and came out, you know, in 1959, already old men and women. And so, and they had stories of being imprisoned in by the communist Chinese for as much as 20 years or 25 years. And when you, like with Rinpoche Rinpoche, when you would ask him, you know, he would say, well, the most important, foremost in my mind was to never lose my bodhicitta, no matter what they did. You know, they would beat him, they would torture him, but he never once felt angry or hostility or towards those people. I mean, these are this is a very extraordinary power of the mind to develop, you know. And I don't know if you remember, but I think it was the 90s, Richie Davidson in Madison, Wisconsin, hooked up Mingyur Rinpoche and different lamas, you know, to look at their brains and could see that developed meditators, their prefrontal cortex is all lit up, you know. And of course, that's where our power to develop bodhicitta comes from. And so I may talk a little bit about neuroscience, because I think what we're learning from neuroscience in the brain, and particularly things like the polyvagal theory, are so helpful to our Dharma practice, because in the West, we like to know why, you know, and how it works, you know. So, but anyway, back to Lama Yeshe. So then we, before this Vajrasattva empowerment, was it empowerment or was just, I think it was just the Soag offering. Anyway, he said, and now let's just meditate on bodhicitta. So he didn't say a word. And we just sat there for 20 minutes. And I remember just going, well, what am I supposed to do now? You know, you know, you can like, by then I'm sure I had learned um, the 7 points, you know, the 6 causes and the 1 effect, you know, remembering all the kindness of my mothers and repaying the kindness of my mother and wanting them to be free from suffering and wanting to experience love. And of course, I can't do that now, so I have to attain enlightenment, you know. Well, you can go through that, but how do you, you know? But I would say the most extraordinary thing about Lama Yeshe was not I mean, his teachings were great, but it was just what it was like to be around Lama. And I think the 2 things about Lama Yeshe was that, one, he had developed extraordinary bodhicitta. So, and what that meant was he, it's like his, you know, our brain, our nervous system is our whole body. It's not just our brain, you know, our brain, our neurons, are all through our body, which means our thoughts, our feelings are not just from here up. And so Lama's whole body just emanated this love, you know. And it was so great that he could fill a whole room with it, you know. And people just felt good in Lama Yeshe's presence. I mean, even people like, you know, my dad, who wasn't really interested in Buddhism, but he came, you know, to Lama's talks, and he just felt so, I could tell he was just blissed out afterwards. And he gave Lama Yeshe a great big hug, you know. And which Lama, of course, they hugged each other. So, and you know, when Lama looked at you, you just felt like you just knew you were okay and you were loved. And he looked at you. He would, you know, look into your eyes, and he just lit up people's minds, you know. And he was one of those lamas that you wouldn't ask his questions, but he would answer your questions in his talk, you know. He would just manage to take care of everybody in the room. And so this was something extraordinary. So this is bodhicitta, you know. And so I feel like, you know, now that I'm older and I just feel like the most important thing still is to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. That there's one part is, we can think about it as, of course, we want all beings to be happy and free from suffering, and so we have to attain enlightenment. That's the thought. But the experience of it is what Lama called big love. You see, he would sign, big love, and we talk about big love, Lama's big love. Well, that was because Lama's love was a big love. It wasn't the kind of love that we feel for our family or our friends or our lovers that we don't feel for other people. But it was a love that was big enough that it covered every sentient being, no matter what they did to Lama, No matter, it didn't matter what people's behavior was. Just like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when we do the morning prayers, one of my favorite one in his morning prayers for us is, every being is precious. Every being is precious. And the whole point of Namaste, is every being is precious. And so I just thought, well, how do we do this? How do we go about becoming like that? And something that struck me years later, I just remember little sound bites here and there from different teachers, but His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, one time he said, there's two experiences that you feel with your whole body, and one of them is love, and the other one is emptiness. So, that really struck me too, because when we talk about enlightenment, we talk about the two wings of the bird, that you need both, but you need relative bodhicitta, the, love, compassion for all sentient beings, and you also need emptiness. And so it suddenly dawned on me that because they're both things that we can feel with our whole bodies, then it makes sense why love is the method. Because if we can learn to feel love with our whole bodies, then the next step is emptiness, isn't it? That it just kind of comes naturally, because the nature of big love is emptiness. So if we pursue, emptiness is not that, we can understand it. We can do the 4-point analysis and look for the I can't find it, but how does it become our experience? And so my thinking these days is that, well, if we develop the big love, then emptiness is just kind of naturally there. And of course, that is inseparable from what we call our Buddha nature. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and I'm watching the clock because I also want to lead a meditation about that. But knowing Western people, I thought I would explain a little bit more. And also because the key that I found from Lama Yeshe was the things that he told us over and over again, which was that you've seen the written down. Rabina would always have on her slogans in the Mandala magazine, if you're kind to yourself, you can be kind to others, or be kind to yourself so you can be kind to others. Or Lama would say, he would call us his golden flowers. He'd say, oh, my golden flower, grow yourself, take care of yourself, be good to yourself. Don't put yourself in the concentration camp. And it's taken a long time to understand what that means. Because, and of course, we've all been around long enough now to know that how surprised His Holiness was in the 1990s when he discovered that Western people suffer from low self-esteem. It's not, children in Tibetan culture aren't raised the way we are raised. And so they don't have their sense of joy and innate goodness about themselves, shamed out of them before they're one. They're not they're not taught to behave by shame or by force or by punishment, And I know that children are raised differently now. but at the same time, it's just ubiquitous in our culture, of not feeling good about ourselves. And Lama Yeshe is just completely right. We cannot develop bodhicitta until we learn to feel good about ourselves. And what happened for me, I don't usually talk about my retreat so much, but it seems appropriate here now, is that when I went into that first long retreat, I'd already spent 6 years or so doing all the thousands of these and that, so I'd had quite a bit of experience in retreat already, 3 or 4 years of just, shorter retreats and a couple of year-long retreats. So I was familiar with the drill, and of course I was younger and I had more energy, um, and so but I was quiet. I didn't speak. And although my friend Roger was nearby, we were doing separate retreats. We didn't communicate. And so I was on my own mostly and quiet. And so after about a year, this of being that quiet and doing my practice, I started waking up in the morning with this sort of feeling of dread, this sort of overwhelming feeling of dread. And I didn't really understand where that came from, but I began to realize that that was underlying my sense of self. And it was connected to shame. And it took, a year of being quiet and doing practice for that to come to the surface, because it was so deep inside of me. Because, for all intents and I mean, I didn't have trauma growing up in my house so much. And, my parents loved each other, and I was a good student at school, and I was good looking. I mean, I didn't, I was a successful kid. It wasn't like I had trouble, I mean, well, there was some trouble in school, and I've seen but that's another story. So I got to the point where it felt like I could feel, my inner goodness, or as Trungpa, because back then we were reading all of Trungpa's books, what he called my basic goodness. And I could feel that that was there. My Buddha nature was there, and that Buddha nature is, great love in the nature of emptiness. It's love, it's emptiness, it's the union of the two. And of course, that's what we are going into retreat to do, is to liberate that. Lama used to say, he used to say, it's in us. We just have to peel all. He used to say, we have all these blankets. We have all these blankets on us. Purification is the process of peeling off the layers. You'd like the layers of an onion. So I had that, that idea, and I could feel that, but it just felt like, I remember thinking that there was like this barbed wire fence with all these arrows, and like a protection circle, not the kind that you visualize in Tantra out here, but there was one in here that was preventing me from touching my innermost nature. So how did I go about letting go of that? And that's what is so beautiful about Buddhism, is that we can do that. And partly how I went about it was, I was lucky. Before I went to retreat, a friend of mine introduced me to the work of a man called John Bradshaw, which was early now. It's very common now that we have we're so lucky, there's all these teachings on your inner child and liberating trauma, and all the wonderful teachings of Gabor Mate and Dab Dana and all these different people who are helping us with our psychology. Because Lama used to say, you need a healthy ego to practice Dharma. And most of us don't really understand that we don't have that we don't have a healthy ego, And so we work with all these voices inside our heads. So this John Bradshaw books, one of them was called Healing the Shame That Binds You. But to cut it short, what I began to understand that I could do in retreat was that with one part of my mind, I could hold. And after I took the key to this is taking refuge in bodhicitta. And of course, I only kind of can see all this in hindsight. But once I had really taken time, because when you're in retreat, you can really take time to sit and develop refuge and bodhicitta at the beginning of a session. And the more I did it, the more I realized that that was important, to the point where when I was finally asked to start teaching after 20 years or whatever, I thought, well, that's the most important thing to teach is refuge and bodhicitta. And I still think that, and that's what we're going to do. But what I could do was, once I established this, it was beginning to create, learning how to create an inner world, an inner landscape that was kind to myself. And so what I've recently learned because of studying a bit of neuroscience and the work of another trauma therapist I like called Sarah Payton, she uses a lot of brain science. But to use the language of brain science is that within our minds, if you stop, in fact, let's just stop for a minute. And if you're not thinking about anything, what goes on in your head? So I'll just stop for a minute and we can just be quiet and watch our breath. Maybe just 30 seconds is enough. So for me, when I stop now, because I've been training at this for a long time, and I just immediately feel this inner peace. I just feel refuge and bodhicitta, and my mind just becomes oneness with this big love that I'm so grateful to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa and all my teachers who gave me the circumstances with which to do that. But it's taken a long time. And so what the neuroscientists talk about is that we have within our brains what they called a default mode network that is which is different parts of our brain that work to create this inner landscape of voices that we have. And so most of the time, if we are not doing or thinking, then this default mode network is what's operating. And for most of us, it's a voice. It's like oh, you didn't do this, and why didn't you do that? Or la 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 la. It's all this kind of noise that we picked up as children. And maybe if it's not you, I'm so happy for you. But for many of us, even if it's not voices and sounds and words, it was that feeling I had, this overwhelming just kind of sense of I'm not good enough. And so we need to heal that so that we have available what is our birthright, which is big love. And that because bodhicitta is there, it is for a healthy mind, it's the state of that mind. And so how do we go about healing that default mode network? And it's interesting because for me, I realized that, I didn't know any of this back then, but I realized I kind of developed how to do it based on, what Buddhism teaches us. But I needed to have that extra ingredient of just being able to kind of hold two parts of my being and one. Because you see, we can go about Buddhism by trying to manage our mind, trying to control our mind. Like I remember hearing one of the greater teachers, Western teachers, saying you should treat your mind like a naughty child, and I just went, oh, that's so horrible, because we'll never get concentration and peace if we're treating our minds like naughty children, because that makes us go like this, inside. And so what we need to like recreate, I mean, I don't know if this makes any sense for you, but I'm going to say this stuff anyway, because I know it'll resonate with some people. So rather than managing our mind, which is still this sort of authoritarian, like telling us, now you have to do this and now you have to do that, and willing our way, like willpower will only go so far. And there has to be joy, there has to be love, there has to be comfort in our minds. We can't be another authoritarian parent, school teacher, and get to enlightenment that way. It'll just never work. And so what I discovered was that, and I don't hear other teachers saying this. I mean, I know that we hardly, we've learned in mindfulness training, we learn to sit and be with our minds, and just let it be as it is, and not push it away, and not ignore it, and not follow it, and not suppress it, and just let the mind be, right? And and that's all very important. But for me, that's only part of the picture. The other part of the picture is that within that place where we're sitting and being, we need to make it an inner landscape that's happy and comfortable and loving. Because I can remember, actually, when we were at Tashida in 1990, Pemo organized a interview with His Holiness for us, and he said, His Holiness looked at us and he said, your meditation should never be cold, especially your shamatha meditations. They should be warm. So how do we get that warmth? That warmth that is bodhicitta, that is so that our default mode is because is a warm, calm place. Because what happens is that meditation can become another form of distraction. Meditation, especially in our tradition, in NFPMT, where there's so much intellectual stuff going on. We can do analytical meditation and stick with it for a few minutes, but then we get restless, so we have to go on to something else, or we can do tantric sadhanas and we just recite sadhanas, and when we get to the part where we meditate on emptiness, we stay with it for a few minutes, and then we have to go on because it's so uncomfortable to just be there. So how can we just be there, And so I remember just training myself in the beginning to just sit with however uncomfortable it was, to just be there with it. And so then what began to happen for me, and this is the practice that I want to share with you, is that, and for any of you who come to the White Tara, I lead these White Tara meditations twice a month online, and it's been really good because I get to do this with people. But I've developed this way where we think about the objects of refuge, we think about our gurus, and understand and imbue them with this unconditional love that we know. I mean, if you have the great fortune to be around a realized being, then you have felt that. You have felt that unconditional love, When His Holiness looks at you, or Lama Zopa, or whoever is your teacher, if you have a great teacher, then you feel that. But we can even just imagine that, we can imagine maybe we had a grandmother, or maybe it was our mother. For most of us, it probably wasn't our mother, but there was somebody in our life, that really, truly loved us. We just imagine that there is this, omnipresent, omniscient, loving being that's, raining down love into us. And in the beginning, it might not feel like much of anything, but I'm sure that if we take take refuge the way Lama, see, I was trying to figure out what Lama meant, you know, how do you take refuge without saying anything? And so, you know, we think about the qualities of the Buddha, we think about love, you know, we think about compassion, and then we just imagine that from the heart of the guru, this is why guru yoga is so important, you know, why guru yoga, you hear in Tantra, you know, guru yoga is the most important part because devotion opens our heart. And devotion makes that two-way street. And I know that some of us have had troubles with our gurus because we live in degenerate times and, you know, it's not always straightforward how people behave. And our cultures are very different. And a lot of times we just don't understand Tibetan culture and it doesn't make sense to us. And if you remember the end of, you know, Lama Zopa's life, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's life, he said so many times, you know, that the guru is the Dharmakaya. So we have to forget about, you know, sort of like the relative experience we've had with Tibetans, because another thing that Lama Yeshe said so many times, he said, forget Tibetan culture, completely forget it. And I can see that now, and I see all of this, like, you know, all this money and everything that goes into big gompas and fancy costumes and all this, you know, and it's like we just want simple love, you know. And Lama was like that, you know. And so anyway, so the guru, we can still have a relationship with the Buddha and Tara and whatever, just you pick a symbol for you that is this enlightened, loving being. And then you just allow yourself to be in their presence and breathe in that love. And and as you go through this and gets deeper and more, then that becomes a stable part of your mind. And then another part of your mind then embraces that voice in your head. And there are many different voices that come from different times in your life because, you know, our minds are just synapses and neurons. And you know, we talk about emptiness, but it's really helpful to know that our mind is just a bunch of neurons that are firing that we have given stories to. And these stories are just stories. And that when we give the brain newer experiences, then those old stories will begin to lose their power. And and because our personalities and who we think is who we are is just a bunch of stories and ways that we've had to adapt to survive our childhoods. You know, what we learn and when we study trauma is that what children need is they need to be safe and they need to be connected. And so children will integrate any kind of terrible voices and feelings about themselves in order to keep that safety and keep that connection with whoever it is as their caretaker. And of course, all caretakers are not Buddhas. And so we've incorporated a lot of issues about ourselves that make us have this voices in our head that aren't the ones that we need to support us in our path to enlightenment. And so when we understand that, it's like, okay, well, these behaviors that I adapted, they don't fit me anymore. So what am I going to do about them? Just with and so the thing about what I've learned about healing these things is that the other thing your mind needs is a witness, somebody that's listening. And so that's the other thing we can do when we take refuge. You know, we talk about confession. Well, we can just tell Buddha, we can tell Lama, we can tell Tara, you know, these things, and then just imagine that this love is pouring into us because the brain doesn't make a distinction between an imagined, visualized person and a real person. It has the same impact on changing the way our synapses fire in our brain. And so our personalities are just adaptations for safety and connection. And when we create new forms of safety and connection, then we can heal that inner voices, and then we can begin to actually meditate with shamatha. We can have a quiet mind that will develop openness, but we have to be willing to be with what's ever happening in our minds, without trying to change it, without trying to transform it, without adding an antidote, without, and just letting it be there, and then have faith that our refuge will pour into that space. Because I remember a long time ago, Wendy Ridley, I think it was in 1981 or two, and she said, and I'm sure she'd learned this from Lama, she said, taking refuge is like when a rabbit is running from a fox or something and finds their rabbit hole and they're safe. So when we take refuge, we want to bring an element of, I feel safe, and I feel loved. And I know Thich Nhat Hanh used to teach this. He would teach very simple. When I breathe in, I feel safe. When I breathe out, I feel love. And something as simple as that, because taking refuge then gives us that safety. It gives us that refuge, with that witness, the Buddha's there to hear us. And then we heal. We need to be connected to others to heal, And so, rather than try to manage our way into the Dharma, we need to try to love ourselves and support ourselves and be able to just be okay with whatever level of development we have, and just be like that thing. Start where you are, So if we're starting with just sitting and being with letting loving kindness come into us, and then the next step is this remembering all the sentient beings, because the other thing we need to be healed of these voices and these traumas, however big or little they are, is we need to feel connected. And so I only just a couple of years ago, when I was studying this trauma, and it was like, wow, you heal trauma by being safe and being connected. And this light bulb went on my head. Wow, that's refuge in bodhicitta. That's what I've been doing all these years, slowing it down, taking a half an hour to take refuge in bodhicitta. This is the benefit of having retreat time. So I think I've said enough, and we'll try it, and then we have time for questions, because I've only taken up, we've got lots of time, and yeah, so let's just try it. And I'm sure everybody here is a Dharma practitioner. I doubt it if there's people who aren't. So we all know how to take refuge. So we'll just take 5 minutes, okay? And then maybe we can have a good discussion. But imagine in the space in front of you, however you like to visualize your refuge field. It can be simple, your Lama, the elaborate one with it depends on what kind of mind you have, the Pure Land and the tree, and, all the beings in the tree, and however you want. But just for me, I just always use something simple like Tara or Lama Yeshe, or knowing that they're the same, Lama Zopa, And when we take refuge without words, it means we feel it in our whole bodies. Remember, I talked about feeling love and emptiness we feel with our whole bodies. So for some of us, being in our bodies is not comfortable. But we can just start by being aware of the breath. And if it's possible, to bring the breath down into our bellies. And imagine with our exhales that the exhale goes down our legs, and our breath goes down through the bottom of our spine and into the earth. And we can, if you need to, put your hands on the side of your rib cage and feel your breath pushing out your ribs. And then putting it by your collarbones, feel your breath going up your collarbones. So that every cell in our body is being touched by this breath. Because the mind is all through the body. So if we want to transform our mind, we work with our bodies. And these stories are held in our bodies. So to liberate our mind, we liberate the body. And you can feel the breath going down your arms, up to the crown of your head, your toes, your fingers. And if this is not easy for you, it's a practice. It's something to begin to work with. So that when you breathe, you feel the breath in your whole body. I remember one Lama said, where there is blood, there is mind. And prana, our breath, goes throughout our bodies well, through all the subtle channels. Now, when we inhale, we feel the blessings, this loving kindness of the Guru, of the Buddha, the Yidam, pouring into the crown of our heads and filling our bodies with this sense of being loved. So if that's difficult, maybe you can remember a situation or a person or a pet where when you think of them, you do feel soft, warm feelings. And just let yourself feel that. And if your mind continues to chitter chatter and like, what is she talking about? And you're just like me, when Lama asked us to do this, I, couldn't. But with time, you can. With an intention brings attention. With that comes transformation. So it's good to remember I'm taking refuge to benefit so I can become enlightened for all sentient beings. I want to become a Buddha. However long it takes. Lama used to tell us, I'm good enough, just as I am now. I'm good enough. And all those parts of ourselves that don't feel good enough, every time we breathe in, we're surrounding those parts with love. Because Buddha's love is everywhere. And it is our true nature as well. Our bodies want that. And all the ways that we've adapted were only because we wanted and needed love. And then we take the second step, which is remembering our parents and our friends and our family all around us. And remembering first off those people that we love and care for. As we breathe in, we are breathing in these wonderful healing, I love you just as you are, blessings of the Buddha. And when we breathe out, because we filled up our whole body, all of our cells are now vibrating with this refuge and big love. And then, so as we exhale, going out through all our pores, we send this love out to all sentient beings. And this is our connectivity, our bodhicitta. So first we establish our own love and safety, and then we share it. And each time we breathe out and share with others, it's healing us too. And we can send this healing refuge out in all directions as far as we can imagine, and covering the whole earth, relieving the greed and the empty hearts that cause people to be aggressive and proud and want to go to war and want more money than they'll ever spend. Just filling up that hollow need that is only filled with love, not with stuff. And so when we're doing this meditation, we can relax now. When we're doing this meditation and stuff comes up, we just sit with it, you know. And I remember reading something from Pema Chodron a long time ago. She said, just drop the storyline and be with that energy, you know, because the brain, you know, creates the story, but underneath it is this, what we feel. And so if we can develop this, it takes a little while, but if you can develop this inner landscape of safety and love, then when stuff comes up, you know, of your things that need healing, then you can be with it in the present tense and just sort of infuse it, or just be with it in this loving space. And it will eventually stop bothering you. You know, it won't be there anymore. because the brain has found its new pathways to flow through, And there's a lot to be studied about this, and I won't go through it too much, but I just wanted to also tell a story, if I can. Yeah. I read this story the other day. It just takes about a minute, so it won't take too long, but because I think it's appropriate here, it was an old American Indian story. A Cherokee old man was talking to his grandson, and he said, I have two wolves inside of my head, One is the good guy, which is joyful, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. That's a big list, isn't it? And the other one is the selfish one, anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, fake pride, superiority, and ego. So, I always think of Gollum, Gollum, probably everybody saw Lord of the Rings. He's just the classic character about, working with our self-cherishing, And the thing we need to know, though, is that it's not a bad thing. All that what we call self-cherishing, we talk about defeat self-cherishing and all this kind of way of trying to like be aggressive towards it. It's not going to work. Because we have to understand that all of those kind of self-cherishing behaviors were just ways we were actually being compassionate to ourselves as finding ways to adapt to survival, to being safe, to being connected. And I think this is the great thing that Western psychology is offering to us, that these things about ourselves that we want to reject, rejecting them isn't the way out. It's by loving them and listening to them. Let that voice have its say in your head. There's some little child in there going, just let it go, listen to it with the mind of the Buddha, and be open to it and love it, And so this back to the story. So the grandson says, well, who's going to win? And the old grandfather says, the one that you feed. So I find that very interesting because I know that in our practices, we're always trying to feed the good guy, and then we're trying to like make the bad guy go away, But the bad guy's not going to go away, especially because the techniques that we use stop here, And what I've been saying, you probably heard me say this before, you can't apply a thinking antidote to a feeling. They're two different things. You're just going to end up with another thought, and that's not going to release the emotional thing that's there. It has to, we're starving, it's the one we feed. Well, we can't feed the good guy because we are cut off from our bodies. And why are we cut off from our bodies? Because when we go down in there, that's where all those voices are held. That's where all that pain and it's stuck in our bodies, So the thing is, if we can just do this meditation of bringing it into the body, and it takes time to learn and to cultivate, and things like Qigong and yoga help, but really just spending time just bringing your awareness into your body. I know in Vipassana we do that, but we need more and more of that so that you can feel let those voices come, and be with them. Don't try to go, oh no, there's my self-cherishing, I'm going to punish it again. It won't work, So that's kind of all I wanted to say. And there's lots of time left. And if you want to talk, or we can end early, or you can ask me questions about retreat or anything, but I just want to open it up now. And you might disagree with me or whatever, but I just felt like I needed to say that. And I hope, Deki Lee, did I communicate that very well? Deki Lee's my pal. I talked to her about it last night and I said, I don't know if I can explain this.
Oh.
Yeah, well, so you can unmute or I don't know, I guess that's your turn now, isn't it, Kunpin, to let people speak? Yeah.
Paula, yeah. Anybody who would like to say something, you can unmute yourself. Yeah. Thank you so much. Diki Lee, you would like to, shall I?
I just need to know if I'm communicating or anything. Oh, there's Sangi Kadro. Oh, thank you, Sangi Kadro. I really look up to her, you know. She's like my Dharma elder, so she's amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Nobody has anything to say? Are you just shy?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Paula, I think everybody's just shy. There's a few things in the chat. Do you see the
And I
chat,
read,
Paula?
I saw the
Maybe
chat.
maybe I can speak what I said in my chat.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful, and it was very insightful what you said when you spoke about polyvagal theory and the works on trauma. I was thinking also about IFS, the internal family systems, and all those psychologists that I think they studied Dharma and Tibetan medicine and so forth.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was receiving from some of these sources is about differentiating between safety and safeness. That
And
we are
what?
not safe.
Safety and what?
Safe
Safety and
and
what?
safeness. 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 Is like in one case, safety is when you are away from the triggers, from the trouble, from the dangers. And safeness, it seems like very suitable to the Bodhisattva, at least for the Arya Bodhisattva practice and our teachers. Not to be in safety, but to be in safeness because of being resourced. Seems like more the heroic practice when you are resourced, when we are resourced, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go on.
is because otherwise, I feel also the fact of retreating. I live since few years kind of in a retreat mode or semi-retreat mode is between safety, little bit safeness, but not so much yet.
Yeah.
So is about being resourced while we meet things and events and
Right.
listen to. And I also was thinking in terms because I've been training, accompanying dying people and so forth, you cannot really give the safety presence in there, when you are about to die or you are, talking with somebody that has the issue of having lost a child or like a lady, she told me she's about to die. And giving safeness is like, not giving, just discovering what resources are there is something. I mean, having studied and having had this decades around Lama's retreats and so forth is such a privilege, such a huge fortune. And to convey or to kind of, I don't know, to recognize what safeness, people that didn't have so much of this example and role models. So I just wonder how to integrate this safeness issue because, 2 days I will talk to this lady that she's pretty
Well,
devoid
yeah.
of Dharma. So
Well,
that's it. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you
I
very, very
appreciate.
much.
I appreciate that. And for those of you who don't know, in the world of psychology now, they talk about being resourced, which means, in a way, I think it just means that you can. I don't want to go all into polyvagal theory and everything, but it just means that you can get to that safeness. You know, what she's talking about, the difference between safety and safeness. I don't know if I need to distinguish it, but it's just a sense that I'm okay. And there's different ways that we do that to get ourselves into that mind state that feels connected and safe, because like our nervous systems, they're just hardwired. We're just constantly, you know, our bodies, not unnecessarily thinking mind, is always just feeling, you know, I don't know how many times a second, you know, looking around, am I safe? Am I connected? Am I safe? Am I connected? You know? And so resourced means is that everyone has to find it on their own, but find what technique it is that brings you to that sense of, if you want to use the word safeness and connected. And for me, it's been refuge in bodhicitta as a Buddhist, you know, and what I would like to emphasize is combining it with your breathing. You know, the idea of bringing in the blessing of the guru and either exhaling it into yourself or exhaling it out to others. Because when you connect it with your breathing, this is what I feel is so important, because we're breathing all the time. So when we have practice time to begin to integrate this sense of wellness, really, you know, wholeness, safety, connectedness that human brains need, then if we do that with our breathing, then all we have to do is remember to breathe. So with someone who doesn't have who doesn't you know, have any source of refuge, I think everybody has some. I mean, probably the person you're working with is a Christian. Most people have some Christian background. Or if they don't, then you can just ask them to remember a time when they did feel warm and you know, maybe with their family, or maybe it's in nature, or maybe it's listening to wonderful music, and just remember the sensations and the feelings of what it's like to be like that, and then use that as your resourcing to bring yourself into that place. And you have to work with people to find out what it is for them, but everybody's got some way that they can do that. It might just be remembering their grandmother, you know. And I know that there's one of the ways of doing it that I didn't mention is feeling that you're sort of like a dry sponge. And as you're breathing in, instead of having it like come from top down into the guru, but you can just feel like you're surrounded by people that love you. You could try this with a secular situation. And even if it's just one person, but every time you breathe in, you're breathing in that love all through all of your pores. So that just like as a dry sponge or a dry cloth, you know, you put it in the water, it begins to fill up and expand with the liquid. Well, as we breathe in, you know, we're resourcing ourselves by breathing in this good feelings and bringing in all through our body, you know, and because just breathing, especially if we make our out breath longer than our in breath, just that in itself will bring us to a more calm state. And so remember that, you know, if we're in a situation where we need to calm down, if you need to count breaths, you know, count 8 exhales and 4 inhales, and think about people that love you and bring yourself back into a centered place. And it's really good to practice this, not just when we need it, but practice it a little bit every day, because the world's just going to get worse. You know, things are looking really bad. And with climate change, and now, you know, the Europeans are having to gear up as if there's going to be another war. Hopefully there isn't, but people are getting more and more stressed. And so our job, I feel, is to figure out how it is, what method works for my nervous system to bring myself into a calm, open space and practice that. And if it's refuge in bodhicitta, I mean, that's what it works for me, you know, or just bodhicitta, then great. But if that doesn't work for you, then Find something that does, you know, something that you do on your own that isn't dependent on anything else. Because we can't always be dependent on our friends or having nice music or whatever it is that you, to use her word, resources us. You know, so the good thing about Dharma, you know, Dharma, and it doesn't, Buddhist is an English term, you know, what it means is an inner being, is that we develop the inner resources to love ourselves. That's what it means, you know, and through that, then emptiness comes naturally, you know, because the more we open, the more we relax, then the more we begin to experience our true nature. And that will be with us at the time of death. And I did want to mention, the thing is what we can do before we go to, I think it's really important to practice this before we go to sleep at night. And I know that some of you probably are tantric practitioners and, you know, we're taught to go to sleep with our head in the lap of the deity or the guru. But the thing is, you know, just to make it really simple, when we go to sleep at night, if we can remember our bodhicitta motivation, and if we can remember to think, to recall that love, you know, that big love, and practice like we're going to die. I mean, one of the things that Lama Zopa Rinpoche told us many times over in the last few years of his life was that we need to get a death plan. You know, we need to think about dying. We don't know when we're going to die. And so it's really helpful before we go to sleep at night to pretend that this is it, you know. And so the advice is to generate this bodhicitta and then think about, you know, all the things that we're attached to, just give it all away. Because that makes us become more and more reliant as an inner being on our happiness. You know, we want to be reliant on the inside through taking down all those barriers to feeling our birthright, our basic goodness, our inner being, our Buddha nature, you know. And then if you want, you can do a purification practice of saying Bodhisattva mantras or just, you know, going over your day. What did I do today? Well, maybe I could do that better tomorrow, or like sort of reviewing things. But the main thing is, you know, dedicate, you know, whatever goodness, dedicate all your merits. And then, but the main thing is, you know, just go to sleep with loving kindness in your heart as best as you can, you know. And if you're angry at somebody, work with that. If you feel like I've messed up today, you know, work with that and just see if you can. I mean, I don't always do this, but it's just something to aspire to practice when we go to sleep, what it's going to be like when we die, because that's going to really determine our next life. And as we all know, particularly those of us that have been doing this for more than 40 years, it's a long road. We're going to need a long life and more lives to get enlightened. And so we need to think about how we create the causes for life in the future. Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you for that comment about safety and safeness and bringing up the idea of resourcing. It's kind of, but does anybody else want to say something? Otherwise, you know, I think I'm done.
Hello, everybody. May I say something? My
Yeah.
name is Igor.
Hi, Igor.
Thank you.
Nice to
Hello.
meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. I was not able to participate in the first part for 45 minutes of this because I had to go. I've been at the funeral of my friend's mother passed away. So, but I'm really, really happy to be able to. I'm looking forward to listen to this later because 2 years ago when you did this kind of, it really touched me deeply. 2 years ago, your teaching and the meditation that we did. Since I work with people, I used it many times. And first, it touched my heart. And when I share with others, it's really powerful. So, yeah, I'm deeply, deeply grateful for a connection with you, even though, yeah, I had never been able to meet you. But maybe I would have a question, and that is, how would you put this that you talked about, and in the context of Vajrayogini practice. And is it possible to get some commentary on Vajrayogini from you? Where is this possible? How is it that possible?
Well, if you have the empowerment, you must have.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, if you go to my, a friend of mine made a website for me, and it's Brave, B-R-A-V-E, View, V-I-E-W, Brave View. There is a collection of, I've never given a formal commentary on Vajrayogini, but a couple of years ago, I was at Vajrayogini Institute, and I led about 20 meditations on Vajrayogini. So that's sort of my way of doing it, because I don't want to be a guru, you know, I don't want to give formal stuff. But if you go to the website, you can get into those teachings and listen to them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? On this
Yeah, they're all
brave,
there. They're all
brave
there. It's
view.
all on YouTube or something. It was at Vajrayogini, but it's all there. And the
Yeah.
other thing is, yeah, is that if you want, you know, I do lead, I'm leading a Vajrayogini practice once a month now with Lama Yeshe Ling. I think all that information is on the website, you know, how you can connect. Because I do 3 things online now, 2 White Taras and 1 Vajrayogini. So, yeah, but I can't remember what we did 2 years ago. I never remember what I do. So
It was, yeah, it was such a so much simple. So many. It was very simple. It's very
it's
simple,
probably the
but
same
very.
thing.
I don't know yet. Today I'm so sorry. I was so happy looking forward, and
Yeah.
then I received the call that the funeral will be today. So of course I went.
Yeah.
But I will listen later. It was a simple thing about motivation. About it was so beautifully explained about motivation, how to set up a motivation, and then breathing in. I assume it was similar because it was
Yeah.
like breathing in and then breathing out, touching all the
Yeah.
people and purifying.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
I
powerful.
haven't changed much. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but to but to, oh sorry.
No, go on.
No, I did many meditations, but this 2 years ago touched me really deeply in my heart. It was very powerful, and I remember this kind of feeling when I share it with others, and it's really something special. So I would really love to get some more explanations or commentaries or meditation to keep some connection with you, because it really touched. It was very simple. It was extremely simple. It was just breathing in and breathing out and motivation and dedication. That's it. No complicated stuff.
No, we need to keep it simple. See, what I feel after doing all these things all these years is that we can use our Dharma practice to distract us from actually healing ourselves, because we just keep our minds really busy. And as long as that's the thing about the default mode network, why I wanted to bring that up, because that's what needs to be transformed, not our thinking mind. And so as long and the way to the only way to work with that is to not do anything, because when we're not doing anything is when it comes up. And that's why all the Vipassana techniques are just sitting and being with your breath. And so, but what I feel, I'm just kind of making a summary now. What I feel is that that's hard for so many of us, because to just sit and do nothing, then we're stuck with this default mode network, which is a internal landscape that is not friendly. And so the reason we take refuge and generate bodhicitta is so that then, at least for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, we can sit and do nothing, and then let that mind that's our normal mind, you know, who our internal voice, when it's not distracted, begin to heal that by just not doing anything to it, but letting it sit in this, what our friend here, in our safeness, you know, in our loving place. So if we use refuge and bodhicitta to create this inner sense of safety, then the default mode network, with all of its hurts and all of its traumas, can begin to express itself. And as long as we don't try to change it or do anything to it or apply an antidote or make it go away, but just let it be there, and then try to infuse it like this thing, like the dried sponge. You try to infuse it with this love. And it's not something you think, it's something that you feel. And you infuse it, and then slowly, slowly, that mind will begin to let go. And those habits that, we work so hard to apply antidotes on and try to manage and try to do these, they will eventually begin to unravel, But as long as we're trying to do it from the top down with another authoritarian voice, we're going to have these issues because we don't respond to that, and we have to think of ourselves, these voices in ourselves and these personality things that we have, that they were smart, appropriate actions and behaviors to adapt when we were 3 and 2 and 5. It's just that they're stuck now. And they're stuck, and so we just need to give them a safe place to come out. And then and then we can use, like the story I told, then we can actually feed the goodness, And so, but we have to create a place where it can be. Right? Does that make sense?
It's perfect. It makes a perfect sense. It's
Yeah.
so so
Yeah,
clear, so
it is.
beautiful.
And so, and it just takes being able to remember a kind situation, bring to mind a kindness, bring to mind and grow that one, and because our nature is love, it's not that hard to find, even if you just start with romantic love, or I love my dog, you can start somewhere, and your life will change, and your Dharma practice will change. It will begin to, as Lama used to say, you'll begin to taste the chocolate. It won't be, I heard Thupten Jinpa give a talk the other day, and he was talking about, we can't use our will. I mean, I've done that. I've willed myself through so many retreats. And unless we can bring love and joy into our practice, it's like, hitting your head against a wall. So that's why Lama said, be kind to yourself, dear. Grow yourself, dear. I finally understand these things that Lama told us, and it's taken me years to understand because Lama couldn't tell us exactly how to do it. That's why he said, you have to make Western Dharma. I can't do this for you. I can point it to you, but you have to figure it out, And we've had so many great Buddhist psychologists who are putting us in the language that we can learn, and it's really great. So I didn't know if I did a formal motivation, but I sort of did with dedication. But I think we're about out of time. So let's just dedicate, that all sentient beings. Where was my thing with Lama said? I'll use Lama Yeshe's words. He says that all beings discover eternal peace, so that we are no longer lonely, no longer have aggression, so that all universal living beings become dear friends and communicate heart to heart. So for that, we need to find our hearts. And that was what Lama was all about. It's all about the heart. And I don't care how many times you study low rig and tar rig and all these things you guys study, if it doesn't come from your heart, what's the point? I'm sorry to say, that's how I feel. So with that, thank you so much, Kufin. And thank you all for coming. And yeah, and just keep up the good work. It's just we have a long ways to go, and the world we just have to, and all sentient beings, we dedicate for all sentient beings, and of course for the long life, healthy life of His Holiness, for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to be born in a really loving environment where he's just showered with love and kindness, and he gets to go back to Kopan when he's older, and that nobody bothers him until he's 7 or 8 years old. That's what Osel said, and I really agree with that. And for Osel Hida, for his healing and his success, and for Toshida and all the Dharma centers to have all the physical and human resources that they need to continue with this incredible. I just feel like we're, pushing this huge rock up this hill where all these forces of selfishness are just pouring down out of the world, you know. So, you know, Kumpen, thank you so much for everything you do and being there and holding the fort at Tashida and making it such a beautiful, pure land. And, you know, all the people, all the peacemakers everywhere, may they have long lives and health and happiness. So I think that's all for me today. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paula, for this beautiful session. There's many, many thank yous in the chat, and everybody's appreciating so much. Thank you, Paula. It was very much from the heart. And very healing for somebody who's trying to get Lorik and Tarek in my head. Especially Tarek.
Yeah, just look at your mind. You know, we don't, I really don't, you know, Lama used to tell us we don't need all this stuff. He did say, he said, you people, you're way intellectual, you know, too much intellect. I don't know what's happened to the FPMT, but just, you know, just watch your mind and be with your mind and love your mind. And, you know, you can find out what all those mental factors are. Just look at your mind, you know. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you
Hope I
so
don't-
much, Paula.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next year, maybe, or next time, or somewhere. So, and Igor, I'll see you online some other time.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Paula.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
please
Looking
come back to
forward to it.
Kushida very soon.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Dickie Lee. Bye, everybody.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kumpen.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you so much. And see you, everybody who's still left. Maybe tomorrow again for Venerable Robina. So we have her at 5 o'clock already. I think she's somewhere in Europe. Yes, if you would like to join us, it's our second session, and Venerable Robina is always, good for a surprise. So thank you so much. Have a good evening. If you're here in India, of course, in the Americas, just getting up, and in Europe, have a beautiful afternoon. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.